Okay, so we are going to play A Case of Distrust, which was released on February the 8th, 2018, which is my birthday.
Which I didn't get wrong.
Which you did get wrong.
I didn't get your birthday wrong.
Why did you say which I didn't get wrong?
Because I didn't get it wrong.
You didn't know my birthday.
Jeez.
Terrible.
You told me the wrong birthday. This is set in the 20s, isn't it?
1926, I think.
Yay!
In San Francisco.
Yay!
And it's a murder mystery.
I think we can tell.
Start. Should we go settings first?
Yeah. The case of why Bill told me the wrong birthday.
Because he didn't. We're going to turn the mouse sensitivity up because look.
Yeah, that's really awful.
That's better. Bit less. Bit less.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. It's like a noir.
Oh, text size. Medium maybe? Because of my eyes.
Sounds like LA Noir, doesn't it?
Yes, it said, I think I read somewhere that it's similar to LA Noir. Or that might have been another review. Okay, so far so good. Cool music. I don't know who Ben Wander is.
Like the game, I suppose, maybe? Oh
No,
it's,
yeah.
That they're already a game person who's presenting someone new, perhaps.
Yeah, I think so, but I just don't know who he is. I awoke in my desk chair. Across from me were his piercing amber eyes. They surprised me at first, but I should have known he'd be there. I stretched and said, mid-yawn, not very nice to sneak into a sleeping woman's apartment, but his stare just continued.
It's a cat.
What do you want to pick? I laughed at his glare, or I cursed the open window.
Laughed at his glare. It's a cat, I bet you.
Yeah. Okay, I loved his glare. I'd seen San Francisco's shrewd thugs, hardened cops, and deadly politicians, but none could ever match that gaze. Do you want me to read it all out, or should I just follow it with my... Can you read it from there?
I can read it, yeah.
And flicked it open. I gave him the knife. I held the knife steady.
Hold it.
Yeah, I think so. I was staring back at him.
Where are you?
I said, nodding towards the desk. That's all there is. Take it or leave it. But a detective knows when she's beat, and I knew then he wanted to search the place, and that's what he would do. I sighed, knowing my weakness for his type. All right, I said. Let's look.
It is a cat.
It is a cat. He let out a gleeful meow in victory. I cut a piece of my apple that the cat had rejected, always the sole winner. I jabbed, but I was smiling too because I was telling the truth. There was absolutely no other food in my apartment.
Lazy bitch. You have to read this bit.
Oh, sorry?
Read it.
Yeah. The cat often dropped by to scavenge. He made a lot of noise when he thought I was holding out on him, but right now the place was clean empty. No food anywhere. I had to prove it to him. you have to prove to the cat that there's no
There's
food.
no food.
So we're going to click on...
The fridge?
Yeah, is that a fridge over here?
Yeah.
I had taken copies of old murder cases from the SFPD records when I left. I loved reading through them, even through my own contributions, even though my own contributions were minimal. At that time, I longed for those types of jobs. The truth was, any work was hard to find for a female detective. Okay, so that's that. That lamp had belonged to my Uncle Lewis. He'd been an SFPD officer, one who argued police women could be good detectives, even while the others jeered at me. I knew he'd been right, but my current workload didn't help that claim.
Thought about Lewis?
Yes. I thought about Lewis more often than I wanted. I was lousy at handling the emotions behind those thoughts. This is good for you, isn't it, Dolly? You like... I mean, it's good that it's a female detective, isn't it? That's kind of like struggling for, you know, equality and stuff like that.
Like that, don't I?
Yeah. Oh, look. I kept a small statue underneath the side table. It had been police evidence in a crime, and its owner hadn't wanted it back. I took a shine to it, so I snagged it for myself on my way out of the department. Don't know if I agree with that. Packaged cigarettes were the latest trend, but I still prefer to roll my own. The ashtray was evidence that it was a practice skill. I suppose I had a lot of free time back then. Yes, when I was at university, it was roll your own all the time.
Yeah, me too.
The cat had waltzed into my apartment. Do you think with someone? Like literally waltzing. The cat had waltzed into my apartment a few years earlier. He kept coming back. Though there was rarely a morsel to eat, he'd continue his loud meowing until I proved to him the place was empty of food.
I'm dead. It'll bring me back.
I can't have any trousers on. People would see my... People would see my... well...
package.
I've got pants on, but...
If Bill tells a really bad joke, I die and he has to kiss me on the lips.
Yes, to bring you back to life, but I can't do it now. You have to just come back to life. Talk, yeah?
What about... Oh yeah, okay.
Because I think we've done everything.
Yeah.
We've done the cat, there's
Talk.
nothing else being highlighted. He licked his chops and looked at me. Apparently he still didn't believe that. I needed to contradict him somehow, to show him something in the apartment that would prove it was empty of food. Go back? Contradict? Go back? And looked at me. Apparently
contradict him somehow.
He licked his chops and looked at me. Apparently he still didn't believe that.
Contradict.
I needed to contradict him. There were no cases. That's quite annoying. The magnifying glass is white and white. There were no cases just then, but the cat was mewing and needed attention. I had to contradict the cat by first talking to him, then pointing to a piece of evidence in my notebook that proved the apartment was empty of food. Show the cat there's no food.
Okay, so we've got to go back and do that then.
Okay.
The cat will continue. Okay.
So, can you see anywhere that...
On the left, there's some writing.
Oh, used to contradict.
Mhm.
The cat would continue.
It's the same.
It's the cat. Okay, it's the same.
Go back.
There's a book there.
Mhm.
Is that the notes that we just
No.
to the brim? I wrote everything down, even the minor details. Never know what can be useful. The first half had my old cases. The second half had my current. Should we go to the second half? Might say that we didn't have any food. My old notebook now filled to the bit. Okay. Current bunk adultery cases.
You have to read it out. The second half.
The second half had my current bunk adultery cases. The only things I'd get hired to do, whatever my findings, my employers often refused to believe me. It was thankless work, but even that was hard to come by.
I would just wee on their desks every morning and then pretend that it wasn't me.
Right. How
Because
does that
they're
help
giving
us?
her a hard time, aren't they, the other detectives?
Yes.
So,
Oh, there's a door.
that might be the fridge or something.
That's the fridge.
Read it.
The regular white icebox, tinged yellow with age, half blocked the kitchen doorway. My income rarely kept much stocked in it, and right now it was empty. Well, there you go. It's empty.
And look at the door as well.
The door to the outside world. If I left now, though, the cat would start wailing so loud I'd get complaints from the neighbours. No, he needed convincing before I could leave. So now click on the cat. The cat talk.
No, it's the same.
Talk to the cat, yeah?
Mhm. Same.
Contradict. Show the cat there's no food.
You did that though.
Evidence down here.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm losing me
Yeah, you're nearly there.
evidence. Icebox.
The regular white icebox, tinged yellow with used to contradict. Oh, I see. This is like teaching us how
This
to
is teaching us how to do
question
it.
people
This
and
is good,
stuff.
isn't it?
Used to contradict. Okay, yeah.
Oh, this is good.
Open the icebox so the cat could see inside. Empty, I told him.
The cat looked quizzically at the open door, then back at me. Sorry, fella. There's no grub in there for me either. Keep my figure nice.
Yes.
He stared at me with eyes as disappointed as I felt. Those big yellers always got to my soul. Thoughts of my family filled my head. Okay, sister, parents.
But never mind.
No, it's got to be one of sister or parents, isn't it?
Parents.
Parents, I think. My parents were still in Chicago, where they'd moved their family in my final year of schooling. I'd returned to California, but they maintained that there were better job prospects for my father in Chicago. His alcoholism, his new gigs.
Alcoholism. We'll have to explain to your work that you can't come in because you've developed Americanism.
And I think they'd still allow me back.
You caught it while you were...
They'd be fine. They'd be fine with it. Probably add a bit of colour to my character.
Yeah.
My parents were still in Chicago, where his alcoholism had cost him his job and nearly his life. He'd attempted a clean start many times, but even the Volstead Act couldn't to pry open the grip that gin had on him. My mother stuck by him and my sister refused. My mother stuck by him, whether for her godliness or her stubbornness, I never knew. I always thought her berating only chased him to the speakeasies, but it was the only way she'd known to love him. Most of their money, oh, there you go. Most of their money came from my late grandmother's trust, but those funds were barely a trickle. I often dreamed of saving enough to help them. My mind spiraled into the usual series of questions. Had I even impacted the women's movement? Had I made any change? Women's what?
It sounded like you said women's womb.
Had I even impacted the women's movement? Had I made any change on society at all? Was my plodding career worth losing traditional happiness?
Yes.
What was the point in the life I had chosen? A loud meow from the cat snapped my thoughts back into the moment. I took a deep breath and grinned back at him. He's quite a nice cat, isn't he? Guess you can scram now, I said. Nobody's going to come knocking with food for you, fella. Oh! There immediately came a banging on the front door. Beyond a nuisance, this cat was psychic too. You order out, I asked him. Open the door. In the doorway was the regrettably familiar face of Connor Green. I stared at him, I looked past him. His company churned my stomach. Well, we don't know anything about him, do we?
She does, obviously.
Yes.
We need to know why he churns her stomach, I feel. So
you'd go for that one.
I think that's important, maybe.
In the doorway was his company churned my stomach. It might have been his bergamot perfume, which hung around my nostrils like a lingering, unwanted guest. Or that sordid smile, which was forever plastered on his face.
It's like you.
It's like me.
A sordid smile.
A sordid smile forever plastered on my face. That's not like me at all.
No.
He stared at me through the doorway with a coy smile. Well, ain't you going to invite me inside? I think we let him in.
Yeah.
I let him through the door before closing it. Hey now, he said, looking at my apartment. You know this clutter might turn off some customers. Maybe not me, though.
Yeah.
Some customers? What's he implying?
I don't know.
So that was his angle, hiring me as a detective. I wondered what a bootlegger would need with a private eye, but he answered without my prompt.
Oh, she's a PI, she's not a cop.
She's a private investigator. I'll make this quick. I can't take this to the hog house or the pigs would laugh me out. And other dicks just aren't as tempting. His grin widened. I thought this was going to be quick, I said. I started rolling a cigarette. It wasn't quick, and I'd already rolled and lighted a second smoke when Green finally finished his story. I noted the important bits in my book. Okay. It had started with a letter slipped under his door in a white envelope. The envelope contained a single typewritten leaf, which he handed to me. It read, "End your game, or we'll end you." It had no signature, instead ending with only a small scribble in the bottom right corner that resembled a black hand. Green had a lead on a new rum-running scheme, a connection from Vancouver. He had given a sample to Tiny Paul, the gangster who ran the Tin Spoon speakeasy for mob boss Jerry Ferry. They'd agreed to buy in for more. Green surmised the letter was about his rum running.
Your gangster name would be Bibby Bear.
Would it?
Yeah.
And your gangster name would be Dolly Bum?
Yes.
Not very threatening.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It covers up the fact that we're insane.
Yeah, I suppose so. It's a bit like Tiny Paul. Like, it's contradictory. You know, it's tiny.
Yeah, or Babyface.
Yeah.
Was it
Yeah,
Johnson?
yeah. Like Joe Pesci's in Casino's like really small but is the worst one.
Yeah.
He suspected Redstone Stable, another bootlegger, of sending the letter. He told me that Stable ran a barbershop during the day and gave me the address. Okay, I think we're going to go there.
Mm-hmm. Fake Nation.
Green needed to know who the threat was from. He'd get Paul's gang to deal with them and continue his scheme to get rich. If I go snooping myself, he concluded. Folks see I'm not trusting people. No trust leads to no customers. I need to play it low key, which is where you come in. I raised an eyebrow and stared at him through his cigarette smoke. Something in his yarn was still twisted. Okay, so he's bullshitting us. He must have noticed my reticence because he said, you know, I worked closely with Lewis. I'm sure he'd want to protect me as much as any other victim. My uncle. Lewis had put me on the force.
I finally accepted Lewis's death. I was still searching for answers.
You can pick.
I was going to say the same. Searching for answers.
My uncle, I was still searching for answers after his death. He'd been a man obsessed with helping victims and bringing justice to those beyond salvation. With that ethos, I never understood how he could have taken his own life. Those thoughts haunted me. I'd quit the SFPD and started my own practice, taking his philosophy. Was Green worth my time? Would he be worth Lewis's? Green had tipped off my uncle in a few cases. I wondered if that was enough to warrant my protection. Before I could think past my headache, he threw a bill in my lap. Keep the C note as a retainer, and don't worry about getting in touch. I'd find you later for a chat. He walked out the front door and I let him go. If he was willing to give me $100 with no commitment, I wouldn't stop him. No, hell no. $100 in 1926.
I turned back to the apartment, still confused about the whole story. My headache wasn't helping either. Whenever I lacked clarity, a trip to Southern Coffee was usually the cure. Oh yeah, Southern Coffee. We're going to a speakeasy.
Just double checking that there's nothing else to click on. And then we go to the... Should we check our notes? Because she did say we put stuff in a...
Pretty much saying that we've got to go to Southern Coffee. Okay. God, it's reddening later. Okay. Off to Southern Coffee.
Okay, how do we get off of this now?
Back down in the bottom left.
And then through the door.
I guess so. I mounted a gold plate on the outside that read PC Malone, Private Investigator.
Leave. There was only one place I needed to go to clear my head. Southern Coffee.
Go ahead, Billy Bear.
I don't know if it's going to be the best place to clear your head. Southern Coffee. A basement dive. It wasn't modern, hip, or ever busy. And it was my favourite place to down some paint. Hardcore stuff then. especially in the company of the best bartender in the city. Yeah, go there. I flagged a taxi cab and was on my way. I thought about chatting with the driver to pass the talk.
Yeah, you learn stuff.
The driver was an economics student at Stanford, working to pay his room and board. He was an enthusiastic talker, the type of student who had yet to discover that he was not the foremost expert on any topic, and he disseminated European politics as though he were preaching unquestionable gospel. Indulge him?
Yeah.
I indulged him and listened a while. You see, he said with a proud grin, France and England will be fine. They're going through all the same resurgence that's happening here. The war has only made them stronger. I asked about Germany.
Yeah.
I asked about Germany. Oh, the filthy Hun, he snorted. Why should we care about them? Chancellor Marx put out a statement asking us to take away our sanctions. Hell, if he wanted a fair shake, he shouldn't have started a damn war. Now, I don't know a lot about it. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I have to admit I'm not sure about Marx.
No.
Marxism is something that I know very much about. I kind of do, but not really enough.
Well, go with your deep subconscious.
It's probably better just to agree.
I agreed.
Don't.
Fritz has plenty of room to spur his economy while still paying us back for our wartime losses. The driver grinned as we stopped. He turned and smiled. You're all right, miss. Suddenly turned London. You're all right, miss. I nodded and excited and exited the taxi cab.
So long, Governor.
I'm off to teach some kids. And she gets her umbrella out and Southern
flies out the window.
Yeah. With Dick Van Dyke. Southern Coffee was an automat diner. Ethel Burgess, the lone waitress, was friendly to help with any inquiry. Of course, if you winked at her right, she'd show you the way to the downstairs toilet where Frankie played bathroom attendant.
I don't think it's rude. I think it's alcohol.
Oh, I see. Okay. I love the artwork.
Yeah.
It's very good. That's my sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm into all this kind of flat.
Yeah, clean
Flat, clean stuff. Yeah. Southern Coffee had the distinct feeling of home, the familiar smell of mould in that older basement was enough to put a grin on my face. Oh, straight for the alcohol.
Typical bear.
I grabbed the wine bottle on the bar and examined its label. It featured a picture of grapes and the words, "Sacramental use only." Frankie looked at me with a spark in his eye. Go ahead, he said. Give it a swig. Drink. I grabbed the half-empty glass that had been next to the bottle and swirled some its contents.
Between my gums.
Some its contents between my... There's a missing typo, isn't there?
Just carry on.
Some of its contents between my gums. A bit spicy, ain't it? Frankie asked. It's good. Too much.
It's good.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good, I did. Go, just rest down. It'll cost you too, he said with a smile, and he grabbed the bottle from me, turning it through his hands. Rubbish charge more than a nickel for this beauty. Only this type of Napa wine is made from that Zinfandel grape.
Put more oomph into it, Bibby.
It has a unique aroma. I'd been trying to learn more about wine. Seemed everyone knew their stuff but me. I noted that Frankie had said about the origin of the grape. as he sat the bottle back on the bar. You don't even drink? Since when do you know grapes?
You pick.
Since when do you know grapes? Since when do you know grapes? I chided. Frankie let out a bellied laugh. Some of these grapes are older than you, Malone, and I've known about them since I was a small tot. It's why I'm so good at my job, you know. Frankie sighed. Too bad more folks can't taste them. That women's league is the devil. The Women's Christian...
Women's Temperance League were the ones who were pushing for prohibition.
Oh, okay.
And for a general clean-up, like, of Hollywood and everything.
Right. So should we say that?
Yeah, maybe.
The Women's Christian Temperance Union was now under feminist Frances Willard, a positive force for the suffrage of women, but her staunch support of prohibition, along with the union's massive political clout, irked the very wet San Franciscan public, and she particularly wasn't popular with bartenders. Take a seat, he said. I'll make you something else. He was a big fella. He'd been a decent pitcher. He was a fantastic orator. You pick this time.
Pitcher.
He'd been a decent pitcher for the Seals a few decades earlier. Sometimes he'd speak wistfully of those days, but his arms were much more used to slinging bottles now. I sat at the bar. You got the spooks, PC? He asked. You're worn as a catcher's mitt. I suppose my exhaustion showed. I won $100 for nothing, and I can't let it go. I told Frankie about the case, the threatening letter sent to Connor Green, how he assumed it was related to his bootlegging and his suspicion of Redstone Stable. The story took longer than I'd wanted, Frankie showing genuine interest by asking many questions. When I finished, he threw me the whiskey sour he'd been stirring. I took a large gulp and gave a sigh as thanks. Well, Green's case is better than most of what you are given, he said with some enthusiasm. At least it's not more of that adultery bunk. Sure, I replied, but I started with a goal in mind. What's the point in helping a man like Green? Frankie clicked his tongue on his teeth. Lawyer or priest, why does it matter? Let me ask you, are the clients you have now the types you want to help? I admitted they weren't.
Maybe.
Yeah?
Okay.
I admitted they weren't. I told him that I'd wanted more from my detecting life. It could be that Green's case shoots your career forward, Malone. I sighed and stared down at my drink. But my daze was interrupted by the basement door opening, then slamming shut. Oh. A small blustering woman began marching towards me. She looked younger than she was wearing a...
Younger than, I want to know.
She looked younger than 25 and was a few inches shorter than my 5'6". I thought her grey trench coat was too large for that small frame, which was when I realised it was exactly like the one that had belonged to Lewis. She hurled insults at me a while. All I could do was sit and take it unless she ran out of gas. Until she ran out of gas and started breathing heavily. I sat my drink on the bar and looked her in the eyes. I inserted a hello.
I think study her features.
Studied her features. Yeah, study her features. I studied her features more thoroughly. It was plain she was a knockout. Now that she'd finished shrieking beyond the latest blush and lipstick, she had the natural soft skin and bright eyes perpetually desired by the opposite sex.
Like you?
Yes, yes. While I was eyeing her, she caught her breath and restarted her tirade. I'm the wife of that bum who sneaks into your bed. The cat? Just that one?
The cat, yeah.
The cat, but humour wasn't her angle, and she launched into another poetic stanza. And he just left your sty this morning, she finally ended.
Where is she from?
I don't know, but she's blustery and loud and crass.
Yeah.
And he just left your sty this morning, she finally ended. And that was when I gathered she was Connor Green's wife. Mrs. Green, I'm a PI, not a homewrecker, and I don't think your husband, in his line of business, would want to bed a dick anyhow. Her look was pure incredulity. A woman in that line of work, she questioned. I don't believe it.
I think prove it.
Can we prove it?
I don't know.
Let's try and prove it.
Yeah.
Prove it.
Evidence.
Show the cat there's no food. we could try.
Your notebook?
Yes, where's that?
Up, down.
Notebook.
Yeah. My old notebook now filled to the brim. I wrote everything down, even the minor details. Show to her.
Should we do that?
Yeah. Do you think that might be bad?
No, I don't think so. You see, Mrs. Graham, this is what I do. There's not much more I can show you to prove it. It still took more coaxing for her to believe me, but eventually she came around. She seemed grateful I'd explained it to her.
I wonder if she's got information from us.
Well, I suppose there was no need for us to prove it to her. She's just some woman, isn't she?
Yeah, but it might be.
That's what I mean.
Important.
Yeah, potentially.
You might need her.
Potentially. Apparently she had seen her husband leave my apartment and, distraught, she had followed me all the way to Frankie's basement and decided to confront me. I suppose I lost my head after what I thought I'd seen, she said. She began to cry. Oh, no, she's
Punch
not. Yeah. Smash her over the head with a wine bottle. Frankie, ever chivalrous to a dimpled girl, came around the bar and held her up. Now that's alright, Miss Green. Why don't I hail you a cab and send you on back home? She agreed, and they walked together up the stairs. I like the way...
The colour for each character.
Yes, it's very clear. It's very well crafted visually.
Yes.
When Frankie returned, I said to him, "You turned night real quick." He snorted a laugh. "Oh, hell, we can't have that siren in here. With a torture yelling like that, every street bugger would have come to her rescue."
He sounded like a farmer.
Why are these ones? Why are they important?
Could be.
Mrs. Green is a talk. Can we click on these?
No, I think it's just information that goes in our thing, perhaps.
Yes, possibly. I was just wondering if we should have been clicking on them all the time. That's why I clicked on it. Mrs. Green is a talk singer. What is a talk singer? Do you know? No. Well, I learned she was Mrs. I learned she was Mrs. Connor Green just now. when she came in here, I'd only seen her as Lil Fanny singing lead for the jazz band of the Tin Spoon. The Tin Spoon, I said. Tin Paul's joint. That's
Tiny
where
Paul's
Green
joint.
is selling his liquor. Tiny Paul, yeah. So you think that's where she met her husband? I laughed. You're the real sleuth, Frankie. He made a sarcastic bow. I shook my head. You're telling me you escorted our little torture out just to avoid a bit of hot water? Frankie flushed and said, What are you talking about, Malone? I was never good with emotions, but it was plain that Frankie had instantly fallen for the girl. So what if I had more to squeeze out of her, I asked. What more could you possibly want from little Fanny? She can't have anything to do with Green's mess. What more could you...
Do we need to contradict that?
I don't think so, no. What more could you possibly want from little Fanny? She can't have anything to do with Green's mess.
I don't know. Do we need to? Maybe we should see if we can.
Well, no, because what I'm thinking is if you contradict
Everything.
and you can't contradict it, you're going to be punished somehow.
Like in LA Noir.
Yeah.
Maybe don't. I don't see what importance it is to contradict.
No. So there. What's he actually asking? He's actually asking us if we can.
He's asking if she's trouble, if she's part of it, basically. But it's too early to say, I think.
I think it is. It's not. Don't. I'll just go with don't. Would you go with don't? I'd go with don't. Yeah, I agree. I considered Frankie's point. Maybe she was unrelated to this case. I shrugged and stood up from the bar stool. What had just happened was quite the ruckus. It seemed like my cue to move along. Well, let's search. This. Once I'd asked Frankie to okay, that's fine. Once I'd asked Frankie to lend me some cash from that register, he growled so fierce that I decided not to ask again. I didn't think his employers would notice before I got it back, but maybe he just wanted to save me from myself. Frankie had a bond with that old shaker at the end of the bar. I was surprised he hadn't named it. He could sling a mean drink, though he'd only use the good liquor if he liked you. Frankie liked me. We've done that one.
Mm-hmm. Oh, stool.
Stool? The bar stools were crooked and worn. My usual one was in the centre of the room. I could sit on it for hours if Frankie had a yarn to spin. Of course, the sauce helped keep the in place talk too. Should we talk to it? I mean, we click on him because we clicked on that before.
Yeah, do it. Frankie was still behind the bar. If I was stuck on the case, a long drink with him might be helpful.
Do we see what happens if we talk?
Okay.
I mean, you could just say, like, we've already talked to you. I looked at Frankie. What's eating you, kid? He asked. Ask about notes.
Yeah. Oh, we're questioning him if he knows anything, maybe.
There's no options to do that, is there?
Well, no. See, if you click on one, something might come up.
Oh. I see.
So maybe.
Oh, bootlegging
about
scheme.
the letter as well. Ask if he knows anything about the letter.
Okay. Got a threatening letter.
Or the bootlegging, yeah.
Oh, the day before he came to me, Green had received a typewritten letter. Should we show Frankie that?
I think we should ask about the bootlegging scheme.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I thought.
We're a good team.
I wondered aloud how I could get more dirt on Green's bootlegging. Frankie thought about it too. He offered, well, Green's working with Tiny Paul on this scheme. If I were to buy from a new source, I'd have to try it, get a taster. I continued his thought. So there's likely a sample of Green's stuff laying around, the tin spoon. That would make sense. Maybe I can ask Paul about whatever booze I find in there. Frankie nodded. I thanked him for the advice.
Yeah, see, we've questioned someone, we've got some stuff.
Should we try a different question?
I thought about what else I'd like to speak with him about. Yeah, we can ask him if he knows anything about the letter, maybe.
So we go to evidence.
Statements.
And we go to
Statements. Down the bottom.
statements. Top one, threatening letter one, yeah?
Yeah.
The day before he came to me, Green. Okay, that's show Frankie, yeah? I pulled Green's letter from my pocket and showed it to Frankie. I'm still stumped on this note, I told him. Frankie shook his head, puzzled as I was. Well, Green said he thought Redstone Stable sent it. Maybe he did. Talking with him could at least lead somewhere. I agreed and vowed to speak with Stable. I folded the note back into my pocket and thought about what else I could ask Frankie. What about the grey coat?
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Or the singer at the Tin Spoon?
Yeah.
Which one?
Coat first.
Mrs. Green wore a grey coat that
looked too familiar. It was Lewis, like Lewis's.
Yeah.
I pointed to something in my book, but Frankie's response was nothing memorable.
Yeah, I thought that might be a bit.
Singer?
Yep, singer at Tin Spoon.
Go on.
Show Frankie. So about my waving my magnifying glass around. I asked Frankie about something in my notes, but his response got me no clue. No, never mind. Yeah?
Yeah.
That's it. Never mind, I said. I swiveled my seat away from the bar. Stairs?
Oh, we're a good team, aren't we?
Sorry?
We're a good team, aren't we?
We're a very good team.
Did you move the cigarette thing out of the way?
The worn stairs led to the outside world.
Leave.
I was heading up the stairs when Frankie called after me. So what are you going to do?
Little Fanny?
Yeah, about little Fanny. I'd been thinking about little Fanny. I suppose even mobsters had people who cared about them. And she'd been wearing Lewis's old jacket, so perhaps Green and Lewis had been closer than I'd realised. I guess I'll take Connor Green's bait, I replied. I've got nothing better on the stove, and he might need the help. Something still stinks, though. Well, what's your plan? Frankie asked. The way I see it, I have 3 goals right now. Green hired me for a job. Find the guy who wrote the letter. That's the basic part. But you want more? Asked Frankie. I nodded. Green's a shady character. I have to learn about him. Who is this guy? Dig in his past. I can't go back to him blind. And then there's something about his bootlegging. How'd Green get a connection like that? What's his source exactly? Squeezing that lemon might give me more juice. When life gives you lemons, you make lemonade.
The juice.
That sounds alright, he replied. So where is it you're off to? I got 3 leads. That bootlegger stable, who Green claims sent him the letter, the Tin Spoon Lounge, where I might learn more about Green's
Just
rum running
southern
schemes,
now.
and Mrs. Green, who could give me more dirt on her husband. Frankie nodded his approval. Well, if you're ever stuck, come back and see me. You can never solve anything without talking it over. I smiled and went up the stairs.
Don't trust him.
What, the barman, you think is not telling us stuff?
Don't know. Don't trust anyone. I was debating where to go next. Southern Coffee just coming from there. Either Green's house or Tin Spoon Lounge, I reckon, maybe.
Do you know what? I don't know, because the first thing that was ever mentioned was Stable's Barbershop,
right,
wasn't it?
Yeah, you're right, let's go there.
But I don't know if that's the right...
Let's go there.
Green had suspected Redstone Stable of sending him that letter.
That's it.
Apparently Stable owned a barbershop in the financial district. I figured there would be no harm in asking Stable about it directly.
Go here.
Do you think we should just go and ask him directly?
Oh no, no, that's right. She wanted to know stuff before she went. So don't go somewhere else.
Tin Spoon Lounge.
Yeah, the Green's house.
You think the Green's house?
After Tin Spoon Lounge.
Yeah. Green's house, yeah? Tin Spoon Lounge,
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, blimey, Bill.
The Tin Spoon Lounge was a speakeasy in North Beach run by Tiny Paul, the gangster that Green had put in with. I'd never been there. The mob keeps a tight lip on their own houses, but I figured it would be a good place to chase Green's bootlegging story. We go there. Bye-bye, Carl. I grabbed a taxi cab and told the driver where I wanted to go. I thought about talking with him on our way.
Maybe talk.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think so. I asked him about his shift and how much longer he'd be driving. Not all my conversations with the cab drivers were memorable.
Okay.
I opened the cab door in front of a North Beach warehouse with a wooden sign. The sign's text was too worn for me to decipher any of its English, but a small grey spoon was still visible below the letters. I rapped my knuckles twice over the large metal door.
A panel just above my head slid sideways to reveal a pair of eyes.
Not the cat again. The eyes looked me up and down, then just stared ahead. They were black and held no emotion. The room beyond was dimly lit, so I couldn't see much of their surrounding face. I cleared my throat. Then a rumbling voice emerged from behind the door. Fill full your cups. Feel no distress. At all our great thoughts shrinking less. I looked at the eyes still unmoving. I understood. The doorman wanted a password. I thought I might have something in my notes that could help.
Little notes?
Yes.
I need the correct password to access the Tin Spoon, the speakeasy owned by Tiny Paul, and where his wife also worked as a torture. Oh, do you know what? The password might be at Green's place.
Okay, yes. Possibly, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think it probably is.
Tin Spoon password. Yeah, we need it.
Click on it to see if it says anything.
Password. Doorman password.
Use as password.
What password?
I don't know, just try it.
I repeated his line back to him. Yep, that's what I said to you.
Okay.
But that ain't what I'm looking for. We just repeated back to him what.
Okay, so I think we should go to Green's place and get the password.
Leave.
Read it. Oh. You didn't read it.
I didn't read that one. No, we just leave. He basically, I skim read it. He just said that wasn't good enough. Can't come in.
Green's house.
Green's house might contain more clues about his past, or some reason a threatening letter would come his way, and if I got lucky, Mrs. Green would be there to pump with more questions. Go there.
Yep.
I flagged a taxi cab and was on my way.
I think we should still talk, just in case.
Yeah, always talk, I think.
Yeah.
I began speaking with the driver, and our conversation came to airships. You hear about this Zeppelin fella, he asked. The crazy German thinks he can run transatlantic flights. The Allies won't let him build any
Dirigibles now.
dirigibles now. What's a dirigible?
I just know the word.
Yeah. Give the man a shot.
Lindbergh, is that the guy who had his child kidnapped? Is that the same person?
I don't know. We spoke about the first transatlantic flights and how we saw airships as the travel of the future. My head was in the clouds when I stepped out of the taxi cab at my destination. I brought my thoughts back to San Francisco and continued on the case. The Greens' apartment was a section of an old Western Addition mansion. The owners had divided it for struggling families to rent after the 1906 fire. Once downtown had been rebuilt, people of means moved out of the area. Recent immigrants, mainly from Japan, rented most of the apartments in this part of town. The Greens' apartment... Okay, we've done that bit. I knocked on the front door but didn't get a response. The latch was undone, so I pushed it open and stepped into the room.
I don't know.
What is laudanum?
It's like liquid opium, like, you know, morphine and heroin, and it's like an opioid but liquid.
Okay, that one. The room reeked of laudanum. Based on the smell, I imagined she'd had enough opium to knock out a horse. Probably won't be very useful then, was she?
Yeah, I can try.
Oh, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
I found Mrs. Green slumped in her chair, eyes closed, head rocking slowly.
Hello, Mrs. Green, I said loudly. Do you want to do it?
You started.
Yeah. She let out a long moan from the chair, then lifted her head, but failed to raise her eyelids. She tilted her head to the side, giggled, then let it loll back into place.
Yeah, useless. I shook her lightly and she moaned again, but said nothing more.
I'll just have to look around now.
A wilting plant was on the furthest table from the door. I could never keep plants alive either. Even as the petals fell, they were still a vibrant yellow. The ashtray on top of the smallest table was overflowing with spent cigarettes. I opened the drawer of the backmost table. In it were 2 train tickets. I mumbled St. Louis to myself, but then came the cackling voice of Mrs. Green. Ha! I forgot about moving Connor. I won't budge. Her head was raised, but her eyelids still remained closed. Ask her. I asked her further questions, but her head just lolled back to where it had been. There was nothing else she'd say. I opened the drawer. Oh, it's 17. What's this one then? We've done that one as well, didn't we? Yeah. So it's just that one. The bottles on top of the round table were mostly empty. And coat. The grey trench coat was hanging in the doorway. It certainly looked identical to Lewis's. I searched the pockets and found no identifying marks. It might have been a different jacket, but its recent appearance was off-putting.
Oh, how about looking down at the things on the floor? No, like a bit further up. Go like actually on.
Along here?
Yeah.
No, I think it's a lot sort of simple. Oh, that.
Yeah.
Empty bottles were strewn around the apartment. I brought one to my nose and smelled the distinct aroma of laudanum, opium mixed with booze, a harsh tonic. Well spotted there.
That would be lampshade above. Up.
That one?
No. Up. Left. Can you go up, down? A little bit more. Right.
Door.
Didn't get a password.
Anyway.
Read it.
The frame was just warped enough to prevent the front door from completely closing. Leave?
Yeah, there's nothing else there, is there?
No. We'll have to go somewhere else. Like, where did we try first?
It's the barber shop.
That's where the password was, is it? Or was it the Tin Spoon Lounge?
Tin Spoon Lounge it was.
What, the password?
Yeah, where there
so
was
we
a
go
password,
here now.
yeah,
We haven't been
okay.
here yet, have we?
Yeah, no, we haven't.
Green had suspected Redstone Stable of sending him that letter. Apparently Stable owned a barber shop in the financial district. Yeah, go there. Yeah? Yes, that's probably where we should have gone originally. To get the password. I held that the driver, gave him the address and stepped through the back door. I had basically talking with the driver. We talk. Some weather, ain't it? I said with a southern drawl.
He said with a southern drawl.
He said with a southern drawl. It's San Francisco, I replied. Expect fog and bring a jacket. Wish I'd known that coming from Missouri. Maybe would have stayed on the river. There were always recent transplants to this city.
Why'd you come here?
Yeah. Why'd you come here to San Francisco, I asked. Oh, you know, had dreams of adventure, dreams that my small town couldn't fill. Thought of myself as a regular Mark Twain. But you know, I recently heard a quote of his. The coldest winter I ever spent was a summer in San Francisco. He laughed at himself. We talked for a while about San Francisco, its overcast climate, its treacherous hills, its lush green parks. Eventually he rolled to my destination, but before leaving I asked, did Mark Twain really say that about San Francisco? The driver smiled and shook his head. Nope, but if I tell you he did, at least you'll remember a quote that's mine. I chuckled and left the taxi cab.
Wherever, mate. Fibber.
Yeah. The barber shop was down an alley in the financial district opposite the red brick National Bank. The small bell above the door twinkled as I walked in.
Click stuff. Talk to him.
Don't want to sit in the chair. Look at the chair first. Maybe he'll pretending to be a
Alright.
I don't know. The modern hydraulic barber chair had always seemed ostentatious to me, but this one, with its soft brown cushions and gold embroidery, was the most ornate I had ever seen. The two sides of the mirror's frame were cylindrical, painted blue, red and white to look like barber's poles. They clashed with the otherwise elegant furnishings. The maroon leather chair looked comfortable. It seemed elaborate for a barber shop waiting chair. Him?
Mm-hmm.
There was a tall man in the centre of the room. He was wearing a flamboyant pink suit tailored to accentuate his stature. With a maroon bow tie and pocket square, I gathered this was Redstone Stable.
Come on, Stable, tell us what you know.
Yeah. The man turned to face me. He grinned, and his squinting blue eyes made the smile feel genuine. I must apologise, he said. We do not take walk-ins. I asked him for a chop. I told him why I was there. I studied his face.
Studied his face.
I studied his face. The wrinkles around his eyes indicated he was at least 40, but the rest of his skin was clean and smooth. He wore no hat and shaved his head completely bald. When combined with his smooth skin, it hinted at the look of a small turtle. His pink suit and maroon accessories only added to his eccentricity. He smiled and said, "How foolish of me, of course. You were here for information, Miss Malone." Well, how about a drink? I asked how he'd known my name.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
I asked how he'd known my name. He tissed a few times and said, "That is a dull retort. You know you are not a standard detective. Please do not act as mundane as all the other sleuths," he sighed, but put a smile back onto his face. "Yet perhaps you are here on a matter of interest. What is it you want?"
Yeah.
We want don't we want
password.
yeah that
Go back. Evidence.
no that one.
Mm-hmm. Ask them.
I showed him something in my notes, but I got no good information from our exchange. Evidence.
Okay, well,
let's just look through one by one what we could possibly get from this guy.
Okay then.
Green's letter.
Yeah. Mhm.
I pulled Green's note from my pocket and showed it to him, but didn't let him hold it. Green tells me this letter is from you, I told him. He doesn't like threats. Stable lowered his head to study the note, then chuckled. His knowing grin returned to his face. "But this is a black hand letter," he said, flourishing a hand towards the paper. "Have you ever seen a black hand letter, Miss Malone?" I confessed I hadn't. "Exactly," he said. "You should ring your friend Shipman at the station and ask what it means." Sam Shipman had been one of my uncle's regular partners in the vice rackets. I wondered what Shipman could have to do with Green's case. Stable seemed to think that he had a lot to do with it. I pocketed the letter and continued with my questions, but I made a note to stop by police headquarters to see Shipman. "Well, Miss Malone," he smiled, "will there be anything else?" I think that was the main one.
Yeah.
Green's bootlegging?
Yeah. Yeah. Ask about note.
Green claims you bootlegger, stated bluntly. His grin didn't waver in his response. Would you hang me on Connor Green's claims? I may partake in some gambling, and I may have a talent for it, but it is nothing illegal, I assure you. And you know nothing about Green's own bootlegging, I asked. Stable shook his head. I doubted he would ever answer a question straight. The white letters are what they're saying. That's
right. Yeah.
That's the other person speaking.
Yeah.
And then
Green's past. Does that say Green's past?
yeah, discover Green's past. What do you know about Green's past? I questioned. Only that he has constantly skirted the law. I nodded. Well, Miss Maloney smiled and asked about notes. Evidence we want. Or evidence or statements. We've done Green's letter, didn't we?
It might be Hitchcock Presents and then bedtime.
Should we call it a night and carry on tomorrow?
Yeah, can we save it?
Of course, I'm pretty sure we can. Let's try.
I think we'll leave the game recording here and then just carry on playing it ourselves. And if other people want to play it, then they can.
Oh, okay. We'll leave it here.
Yes.
And if anyone wants to play it,
What's the game called again?
Should we? We'll find out in a second. So I click don't. Let's just see
is
if
there
we
a way of just saving it?
save and exit.
Yeah. A Case of Distrust.
A Case of Distrust. That's it. Okay. Well, thanks for watching. Night night.
Night night.